So, um, Ricardo, thank you very much for agreeing to have this conversation with me. It means a lot.
You're very, very welcome. Thank you for having me.
So Ricardo, you're a neighbor, and I appreciate that my neighbors are stepping up and saying, "Hey, Ricardo, yeah, it's cool. Let's have these conversations." Um, and tell me, how many children do you have?
I have twin girls that are 17 years old, soon to be 18, and I have a 13-year-old boy, soon to be 14.
Okay, okay. Um, so twin teenagers.
Yep.
All right.
Yes.
Well,
We just recently put them on the insurance, so it was a big ouch.
yeah,
Very exciting.
it's an additional expense,
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
right?
Yeah. It's about double the insurance at this point.
Oh,
I have them this week. They were taking a bunch of different courses to get 15% off here, 5% off there. So, but they're good drivers. They should be okay.
so I my oldest is 13, but at almost 18 in girls,
Mhm.
what's what what advice could you give, some of the dads that I've had here that only have girls, but they're baby girls still. What could you say to those guys?
It's just an incredible opportunity. I was so blessed to not just to have healthy kids, but to have twins. It was unexpected. I remember when the doctor said, there's one heartbeat and there's the other heartbeat. And I said, the baby has two hearts. And then I found out I had twins. And so
Yeah.
that was a complete blessing in a couple of different ways. One, and I, there's a guy up the block from my house who has twins as well, and they're probably 5 years old now. And I have since he was had the little double stroller, I tell him, listen, savor every second of it. In particular, I think that for me, having girls first made me a better man, made me a better father to my son. I think I grew up very traditional, Puerto Rican household. If somebody hits you, you hit them back. You don't take any junk from anybody, and kind of the strength of being like the hard, like being the you have to be tough.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate in two ways. One, that I had twin girls, but also I was in grad school when we had them, and my wife is a nurse, so she started working Friday, Saturday, Sunday, like 15-hour days, and so I was kind of a single dad Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. No, I'm sorry, Friday, Saturday, Sundays. I was kind of a single dad
Right.
because she was at work the entire time, and it just, yeah, I can't even imagine how many different ways it made me a better person.
Yeah. Hmm.
So I'd say that would be my advice would be to savor it. I mean, it's so cliche to say that it goes fast, but I mean, it's just crazy. The one advice I'll give this advice, as it was given to me when we first had the girls. Maybe a month later, it was the first time that I came out of the shell, and I went out with a friend to a bar, and we ran into some guy who was there, and the guy was completely sauced. He was completely drunk, and he heard that I had twins, and he came over and he said to me, "Oh, you have twins! It's the best thing in the world." He's like, they're gonna love everything that you do, everything that you say, everything that you do. They're gonna love it until they're about 13, and then everything you do is gonna be trash to them. They're gonna hate you. They're gonna hate everything you say. But then around 16, you get them back, and then you have them forever. And it couldn't have been. It was like to the day. I remember exactly what he looks like with that advice. It was to the day. It's a rough 3 years in the middle.
It's a rough 3 years. Okay. So I have heard from a lot of Latino dads that they've been working on not being so harsh on their kids. Did you find yourself being a little too tough with the girls?
No, I'm not. I'm not the softy, but I guess because I worked with teenagers for a long time, with like delinquent teens and teens who got in trouble, and kids. I I've always known about behavior modification. I've always known about reinforcements. I was kind of a little bit, I guess, readier to manage their behavior without yelling and screaming. I do my share of yelling, but they really don't. There's no intensity behind it. They kind of laugh. Their mother's more the strict, kind of hardcore disciplinarian. Their punishment is they have to sit and talk to me. They would rather be yelled at and punished, but I make them sit and talk.
Right. So yeah, I've had this conversation many times about girls, and I'm always very afraid. I've always had this fear that I'm going to fall madly in love with them, and that maybe even that would be like something that would cause some damage for them, I guess, later on, as they're trying to find someone that is similar to me, perhaps. I don't know, but then it would be like an unrealistic expectation, because I would have been, I don't know, this is all make believe because I don't have girls.
Yeah.
But do you have any of the thoughts that these thoughts crossed your mind?
I don't know. I think it's been the opposite for me. It's interesting. I never really thought of that in that way. It's kind of been the opposite for me. There's a lack of, not a lack, but there's a lot of bad men in the world. Men do bad things. Most crime, most chaos in the world is perpetrated by men, and domestic violence and all these other things. So I've always seen it as, I never thought I want the standard to be high. And I'll tell them that if I fix something, I tell them, your partner, needs to be able to fix stuff, and your partner needs to be able to kill bugs, and your partner needs to be able to listen and be compassionate and make you feel special. Like I try to raise the bar.
Yeah.
I mean, I never thought of it as a backfire, but that'll be somebody else's problem.
That's not my problem.
That'll be his problem. Yeah.
I'm so glad that you said this. I'm so very happy that you just said this, because I mean, I don't, I'm 47. I'm not going to be having twin girls or even one. So yes, but I worried for for early on that it would be too much for me. But I like what you just said. I think that there's an awesome lesson there. I wonder if there's anything that I can repeat. So, I mean, you started off by saying that, yeah, you're right. What, I don't know, 99.99999% of all bad things that happen out there, it's caused by us.
Yeah.
Right? It's men. It's our that animal aggressive behavior. I don't know what's going on there. That might be something for another podcast to discuss. And so, by being the best possible dad that you can be, by being the best possible man that you can be, and highlighting the items that you find important for them, for the girls, right? To highlighting it to them, should theoretically help them identify. Yeah, right. It should help them identify a good partner.
Yeah, I don't think that the world has a problem with women having too high standards for men. In fact, if anything, it's the contrary, right? So I think we men are kind of told that we're savages, that we, boys will be boys, and that the bar is very low for men, I think. And and again, we're talking politics. Men have other burdens that we carry, but in terms of how we treat women and how we treat our kids, the bar is kind of still pretty low. So I don't mind raising that. I've often said that I want to arm especially before I had my son, I want to arm my daughters. When my daughters go out into the street and somebody messes with them, and I mean messes with them in a good way or a bad way, I want them to be up against a 50-year-old guy and his wife, right? So So I raise the expectations. I will tell them, do you see when your mother gets mad at me, do you see me hit her? Do you see me put hands on her? Do you see me intimidate her? You don't,
Yeah.
right? And so you should never tolerate the same.
Oh, that's good. So you're making it a point to say it, to verbalize that which you have identified as extremely important. Look at what I'm doing. I'm not being aggressive towards
Yeah,
my wife,
yeah,
right? Okay.
yeah. I
Oh,
mean,
that's pretty. Yeah.
I think it's important for them to hear that. I just think I think not enough people do like actively coach their kids, especially once they became 13 and they started having the group of little boys were out in front of my house and relationships and things like that. We started talking to them more actively about what you're looking for in a partner and how you should feel after a date, how you should feel after sex, how you should feel after all this, especially with the girls, because I don't think anybody else does that.
Yeah, it seems that not enough people talk about it, right? I think that the conclusion I have arrived at is that that the reason that people don't talk about it is because they think that by they think that by saying it, they are condoning it,
Hmm.
right? It's
Yes.
like if I talk to my daughter
Yeah.
about sex, I'm telling her she can have it, and
Yes. Yes.
that's insane.
Yeah. No.
That's
I,
insane.
Yeah, I think it's partly our rationale for not doing. It's very uncomfortable
Yeah.
to talk to your kids about relationships or about sex or things that it's I've like I said I've done it professionally, but when you talk to your own kids about these things, it's a little nerve wracking, and so I think we find rationalizations to not do it. But you got to pull that band-aid off. If if you don't teach them, the street's going to teach them. So I'd rather hear it from me.
Yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Because I mean, it's a thing that I definitely want to repeat. I mean, I think that anybody listening to this has to know that the 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 answer to the answer to the question of whether you should talk to your daughters and sons about sex or not
Yeah,
is yes, absolutely 100%. Please talk to them, and of course, yeah, keep in mind some age appropriate vocabulary. That's
yeah,
fine if you're talking to your 7 or 8 10-year old, 15, 18, however, whatever, some words can be
yeah,
modified, but at the end of the day, it's always better to have brought it up, um, because because you don't want the bad actors to be the ones to do it.
yeah. They're going to learn, and
Yeah.
so I've even this is somewhat probably more embarrassing to them than it is to me, but um, I even at one point have a list of about, and again, this is something I use at work, but I had a list of about 10 different TED Talks of women talking about either relationship empowerment, professional empowerment, or sexual empowerment, and including sexual pleasure. And I sent it to them, and I said, "You guys can either prove to me that you watch these, or we can sit and watch them together." This was just recent. They said, "No problem, Dad. We'll watch them. We don't have to watch them together." I was like, "Oh my God."
Yeah, thank God. That's funny. um yeah, the reason I like this conversation with you, is because I think that I wish there was so much more conversation around this for girls. I mean, like you said, there's so much that I was reading. Was I reading somewhere? Hold on. Let me think. I just recently was reading or listening to someone say that boys are. What is it? What did she say? Like, she was talking to her daughter about boys and something along the lines of boys are. Oh God, what did she say? Like like little beasts, right? Like little horny animals. I forget what she used, but in essence,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and that's what we are. I'm gonna group you in with me. when
yeah,
when we were 16, 17, 18, and even into 20, like into early 20s, we're like we we have the potential for doing so much harm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in I was not a bad part. I mean, I I never did anything that I thought was evil, and I never did anything that I thought I never took advantage of anyone, like any girl. Never purposefully um uh, um um deceived any girl.
Hmm.
Never on purpose did I try to do, but I am sure that there was a wake of like damage that I was leaving
Yeah.
behind because I didn't know better, right? I was learning, I was trying to figure it out. So having said that, um, you know, we can imagine that there's another percentage of the population that is doing the opposite of what I was trying to do, right? That they're actually, they don't, I don't know to what extent they may be intentionally causing pain, but maybe they're just unaware of how great the pain that they're causing is.
Yeah. I mean, I worked with a lot of kids who did really bad things. There were good kids who did really bad things, and I can say myself as a kid, I was like a wild animal in when it came to sports, when it came to girlfriends, when it came to relationships, when it came to fighting in the park. Like I was raised like whatever boys means, like that's climbing trees, throwing rocks, um, and feelings. I think I don't think we raised boys, at least I was not raised really to consider other people's feelings first,
Mm,
right? Like that's you play fair, you play by the rules, but like the aspect of making sure somebody else is comfortable and somebody else is okay. Like I don't remember that. I don't remember being actively taught the opposite, but I know that I've evolved a lot as a male.
mm,
Then the raw information that my very wonderful parents gave me before they sent me out.
yeah.
And so I know that I wasn't. I joke. I say I don't think most boys can be a good boyfriend before the age of like 25.
Mm.
We're just probably even the nicest comments. We're just not that good at it, right?
I yeah,
It might have to do with brain development and testosterone, of course,
yeah,
which is really
yeah,
what causes most of this chaos. But so I remember telling my daughters, don't play physically rough with the boys
yeah.
because boys don't know how to stop. And
Right.
it's not because they're bad kids. It's like if you tap them in the arm, they're gonna punch you harder. And it just we don't have that whole thing like, all right, I'm done. It just we escalate. We
Yeah,
escalate physically, sexually, like verbally. It just
yeah, yeah.
and so
I think this is an important message, man. Yeah, definitely. I think this is such a good conversation because you're one of the very few people that dares to be honest about his own behavior. Most people are very guarded. I understand, but I'm happy that to have met somebody who's willing to say, yeah, I was like an animal. I was like a wild animal.
yeah, it was. I mean, I've been lucky enough to have the because I lived for a long time in the same area I grew up in. I've been lucky enough to run into many ex-girlfriends and apologize
Oh,
for being insensitive, for being a jerk, for being selfish, for being, um,
yeah,
what else can you do? If there's others out there that I didn't apologize to, or
let me
guys
take
that I fought with in the park, or
yeah, let me take the opportunity now to
yeah, I was never, I wasn't a bully or anything like that. I'm not a big guy at all.
yeah.
But we just taught to be like,
Yeah, but yeah, so what was how many brothers or sisters did you have?
So I have in my home there was three of us. I was the oldest. We're
Okay.
separated by 11 months or
Oh, okay,
12
okay.
months. And then I have an older brother, older sister from my father's first marriage,
Okay.
and then a younger brother who's
Okay.
yeah
So
significantly.
there's yeah, so there's other men. You're growing up around with other boys, and then there's your dad, right? So and one might say, well, that's one of the reasons why why you were such an animal. But I grew up with four women, and I was still an animal.
Yeah, 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 absolutely.
I mean,
It's
it
it's
didn't soften.
testosterone. I
Yeah,
think
no,
it's testosterone.
right. Yeah, it didn't soften me. Like, and you said something so important that I'm so happy that someone else is dares to say, and that is you mentioned, um, um, empathy, right? Like feelings. I learned about that stuff later, like in my 20s, maybe later. I had no feelings. Empathy, that's I had to work on that. I,
Yeah, I mean, really, like, I felt bad if I saw somebody get hurt. If I saw somebody bullied, I would jump in and protect. But like relationship empathy and and self control also.
yeah.
They're just not as. I mean, we teach little girls from the time they're young to cross their legs and say no, and we don't teach boys to say no. We
No.
don't teach boys to kind of be modest. I mean, things are different. Obviously, I'm 50 years old, so things are different than they were 50 years ago. But in many households, I think it hasn't changed that much. So I
Mm.
think components of empathy, self-control, yielding. I didn't learn how to yield until I was probably 30. That like you
Yeah.
didn't have to win, that I didn't have to win. That I can let my wife win an argument. I can let somebody cut in front of me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's not a lot of it seems that there's just not a lot of a focus on educating boys to be, yeah, are we are we not educating boys to be more sensitive, more,
I think we're doing a better job.
right?
I think I certainly did a better job than my parents' generation did, and the one before that. I
Yeah.
mean, kids were like livestock pretty much. So, and no, nobody sat with a kid. Nobody sat with my father and talked to him about the importance of respecting others' feelings and things like
Yeah.
that. Uh,
Yeah.
so I think we do a better job now. I think just in general we do a better job. I think of allowing of tolerating male sensitivity when your son falls off a bike. You don't smack him in the back of the head and call him a jerk. You brush him off. You give him a pep talk. You tell him to get back. So I think we're
Yeah.
you know we're evolving in that way.
I think so. I mean, a lot of these conversations certainly seem to point in that direction, that we are evolving, that we are a different generation than before. I mean, guys like you, like me, we're talking to our children. We're passing down valuable information. You clearly have done that with your girls, and I'm sure with your boy as well. And I think, yeah, I think that the lesson and what has to come out of these conversations is, for anyone listening, is you got to be talking to your kids. You got to be passing down information. You got to be sharing. You also have to be having conversations around difficult subjects. But they may be only slightly uncomfortable, and maybe because we make it uncomfortable. But it doesn't have to be. I mean, like I remember writing a thing, like maybe like a year ago around sex, and the idea that it is, I find it to be like this absolute, this collective insanity when we struggle so much with sexuality, when literally nothing on this planet exists without it.
Yeah.
Everything alive has to have sex, and yet we can't talk about it. Like,
Mm.
there was how is it that we're 7.5 billion people on the planet and nobody talks about sex? That is like mass what's the word? What, delusion?
Mass delusion, yeah, or denial. It's like
Mass denial.
almost like let's pretend it's not there.
Let's pretend it's not there. And over and over again, we I mean, like, with absolute clarity, anything that we don't talk about is going to be hurtful. It's going to be damaging.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, the only way to improve anything. There was this saying I read somewhere. The only way, or I think it's the only way to solve a problem is to understand it. And and if we're not talking about sex, we don't understand it, so it must remain an issue.
Yeah. And the terrible thing is that kids are going to learn, right? Uh, so right now they're learning from their phones. Their access to pornography and movies is just off the charts, right? We used to have to wait for the Sears catalog when we were kids.
You too. That's
Kids,
right. We're
kids.
Sears. You and I are Sears catalog
Yes,
kids.
yes, the Jason Penny or something. But kids now have just the abundance of just crazy, hardcore, negative, bad information they have at their hands. So they're going to learn it. So I try to be aware of that, and I try to do the uncomfortable of talking to them about it, of priming them. I'll tell them, whatever you see on any picture that you see, you will remember for the rest of your life.
Yeah,
Like the mind doesn't lead to anything. So be careful what you look at on that phone,
yeah,
because everything you look up like is in there forever. So I try to prime them because you can't control them. They're gonna go looking, but
yeah.
I want them to go, to back up and say, "Oh, I better
You
get
know,
out of this." So
for years I've said to my boys, you gotta be careful with what you go searching for because some things cannot be unseen.
yeah, I think nothing can be unseen. If
Yeah,
I asked you who sat next to you in third grade, you wouldn't know. But if I showed you a picture,
yeah,
you would say, "Yeah, I was a little kid who X Y Z." So I
right.
think it's all in there.
It's all in
Um,
there.
and so it just this just spurred in my head, but that in teaching them, I think the thought that I've had with my girls is that like girls have to be taught that it's okay for them to feel good.
Yeah,
They don't have to sacrifice it. They don't have to put up with pain or discomfort or anything that feels bad. Again, not just sexually, but all the way through the relationship. That they don't have to be Marias. That they can want and they can
mm,
be happy. And I think we boys have to be taught to please, to take care of others,
yeah.
because we know how to take care of ourselves, but we're not taught to take care of others
We're not.
necessarily.
No, we're not. And I struggle with this all the time where like especially with children, I struggle with this idea because I see women get excited about babies. The women that are not having the baby, they're excited about babies. A baby comes into the room, women want to hold the baby, kiss the baby, baby. Like women get excited. Like there's a world around babies that
Yeah,
that I'm unaware of. I just literally, I mean, like even till today, the only babies I like are
yeah,
are the two I had.
yes. Yeah, like
You know,
I don't feel that. I've never felt like, ooh, let me hold the baby. And I like him. That's a cute baby,
yeah,
but that bond, and I think even that bond doesn't it doesn't start till the baby is birthed.
yeah,
The sonograms are cool and everything, but I don't remember. I can remember one day. I think the first time I felt really, really like this paternal love. I felt the protection. I felt the guard dog aspect of it. But I can remember I was the twins were driving me crazy, and they kept waking up, and I was feeding them, and I had 2 bottles and all that stuff. And I remember I felt like I was gonna break. Like I
yeah,
just felt like just crying. And I'm pretty sure it was my firstborn, Jasmine, and she looked at me and smiled. And I mean, she might have been blind at the time. Yeah, she might have been like 2 weeks, but it looked like a smile to me. And I just felt this like overwhelming love that I was like I still get chills. Like it was just, that's when I think I felt like really that bond with the babies, that
yeah,
like, wow, this is my kid. And this little person just looked at me like right in my eyes and smiled.
yeah.
Um, so clearly I didn't forget that. So
Yeah, yeah, you're right. I think it's important, man. I've been thinking lately about this idea that I think I've been I don't know if this makes sense. Maybe you're someone I can talk to about this. I almost feel like the collective, our society thinks of fatherhood like motherhood because they sound alike.
mhm.
But I've started to recognize that we're nothing alike. Fatherhood is nothing like motherhood. In fact, to the extent that fatherhood should not be called fatherhood, because I think that there's this misconception, like that it's just like motherhood, but it isn't. Men are not like women, or men are not women, and women no, we're not like women, and women are not like us. And so the issue becomes, because women are so caring and they care for the children, and and they are so present, um what 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 the evolution of families seems to be going in a weird direction, where it's like what we're trying to do is to make fathers like mothers. But I think that that's a mistake, and I haven't been able to figure out what the right angle and path and wording is for this.
Yeah.
But you know what, you
I
it
mean,
makes sense, right?
I think what might have happened was, in the pursuit of inclusivity with people who fall in the on the continuum of masculine and feminine, right? In order to include them in the conversation, right? Because not all men are masculine, traditional masculine, and not all women are traditional feminine. And kind of there's a huge overlap. Is that we made it unacceptable to have this conversation about we'll call them the extremes, but we'll call them the prototypical. Your average guy is different than your average woman, and your average father is different than your average mother. And again, I think maybe it's testosterone. I think testosterone plays a big factor in the differences. But I know for a fact I don't look at my kids the same way my wife does.
Right, right.
I can see it in her eyes. I can feel it. I can see it in their eyes. And I think we both love them equally, but it's a different kind of relationship, I think. And I think it might, I think it's very, this is controversial right here. I already gave you consent, so we might get in trouble for this, but I think men are different than women on average.
Well, I mean, I
And
don't,
so fathers are kind of different than mothers with huge overlap.
we are, it is very different. It's very, I think that we have to identify. I mean, I hope that one day we figure out what it is that we are, right? But it is the only thing that could save us from getting into deep trouble in this situation is that we are evolving. We are
Yeah,
in the process of evolution,
right.
right? Because and it just recently, right, in the 50s 60s, when women started being allowed into the workforce, that's when we started talking, really
Yeah,
thinking about what's going on. And so if you think about, let's say, the 60s, so what, we're 60 years, only 60 years into it,
yeah,
where we're starting to say, okay, so um I think that what I'm saying is the narrative has to continue to be modified and improved every year to get closer to whatever it is that we are, because we're not women, we're not mothers, we're something else. And you think about, when you think about the studies that are being done on what it is that we our greatest contribution to children, our, our, some of our greatest contribution to children almost seems silly, like playing with them, playing
yeah.
in the living room on the carpet, in the living room floor, playing rough with the
Yeah.
children, that.
And I think that's the biggest injustice, is that when we have caricatures of what men are and what women are, you lose out. I thank God that I had daughters first, because of the biases that I brought into fatherhood. It allowed me to be tender. It allowed me to be gentle. It also allowed me to raise them to be tough and not to take anything from anybody else. And they played sports and tackle football with the boys till they were till 12 or something like that. And so I got an appreciation for the feminine, with quotation marks, and I think I'm a more complete person because of it. And so, and I think the opposite is true for women, is that to be a complete person, I think you have to embody both. A complete person, if something were to happen to my wife, I would hope to be able to provide whatever it is she provides that's different than what I provide, right? And vice versa, with some success. So like, again, what's the nature of man and it should be man or woman, but what's the nature of people
Right.
is the question that philosophers have asked. So for anybody who says they've figured out men or women or fathers and mothers, they're a little premature.
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
we've figured it out yet.
I think you said something really important here for all the guys that are listening. I think that a complete person must embody both. I think that an awesome lesson out of this conversation, of which there's a lot, there's already been a lot of good ideas here, but you're right. I think that ultimately the man that is looking to be an amazing dad is taking the time to be introspective
Yeah.
and asking himself, how can I also provide some of what my wife provides? What is it that she does? Question number one, right? What is it that my wife provides to our children? And how can I embrace some of what it is that she does also? Because you begin to see it, right? When like you're saying, when you became more sensitive, when you were more gentle, all of these things, that you started feeling good about yourself. You were, and then the things, you start expanding and growing in your horizons, even the way that you think. It's like, oh wait, I don't have to be tough all the time. That's such a relief.
It's an incredible. I think I've cried in front of my kids more than my wife has. We were taking a road trip the other day, and I was listening to country music, and I'm like weeping in the car while the kids are asleep. I had this great song, so I consider myself not fully rehabilitated, but I'm not I probably do the most crying in the house, and I kill the most bugs, and I don't think those two things are contradictory anymore. And I also want to, I also am aware of. I've become more aware, and I don't want to say I was always like this because clearly I wasn't, but I've become more aware of like how I move. That my kids are watching how I move in the world.
Yeah.
So it's not just the teaching that I do from me to them, but they're watching like how I handle conflict. They're watching how I handle an aggressive driver. They're watching how I handle their mother when she's in a bad mood or when she's mad at me or something. Like and so I want them to know that I want my son to know that he can cry and punch somebody in the face if he had to. Like those two things are not contradictory.
you, I do work with perpetrators of domestic violence, and hearing you say that
Oh,
sometimes you have to defend yourself and punch somebody. It's like, oh, I cringe because it's like I spent so much time trying to get that violent person out of these guys. Um,
it's an interesting. It's interesting because I've spent 20 plus years working with sex offenders.
oh,
So we haven't overlapped there in terms of men who do bad things. When I say punch somebody in the face, I mean like in the middle of the night when there's a noise, like I don't tell my wife to go check it out, right? In my house, I'm gonna be the guy, for better or worse. I don't know martial arts or anything like that, but I'm probably gonna be the guy who has to deal with it.
yeah.
Um, and I want to teach my son and my daughter that you can be crying at a country song and the situation happens and you can still step up
Yeah.
and take care of it, whatever it is, male or females.
Right, right, right. No, I'm with you. I understand, man. But and it's funny because there are certain things that are strictly ours. I mean, and something makes a noise downstairs in the middle of the night.
Yeah,
It's your job.
yeah,
It's literally at that moment is the only reason you're in that house.
yes, yes.
Go earn your keep.
I tell my son that I tell my son, I go, listen, women can do anything and everything that men can do. There's only a couple of things we do better. We probably kill bugs better. We move heavy furniture better. And
Yes.
so when you have an opportunity to do those things, you have to step up. Otherwise, there's no use for us.
um, you said something earlier that is so important. The world doesn't have a high standard for how. Let's talk about that a little bit, right? Like the bar hasn't been set too high for men. Ah, that's it. That's it. That's what you said.
Yeah.
And I see it. I see it in conversations. I see it in everyday life. I see it in, well, I mean, I definitely see a lot of it in like you were saying, like in the work that I do with DV. Like we're not collectively talking about, hey, like we don't, like if you asked a good friend of yours and say, hey, what do you what are the five top things that you're doing to make sure that your boy's great?
Yeah, they're good.
He
Yeah,
would.
yeah.
I don't have a top five. We don't know
We want them to
collectively.
be
Yeah.
we want them to be good athletes. We want them to be tough. We want them to be smart. We want them to make money.
Oh,
Nobody says like we want you to be a good husband. We want you to be a good father to your daughters. We want you to be a good neighbor, a good steward of the planet. Like
yeah.
we don't teach those. And the what I've in part of my evolution in full disclosure, I live with one, two, three, four, five women and my son and I. So my mother-in-law and my mother live with us,
Okay.
and my wife and two daughters. So the numbers in this house are skewed in that direction. But
Yeah.
is that the standards for women are, and if anything, with the women's movement, the standards are even higher.
Mm.
Women have to be perfect at work. They have to have perfect at home. They have to look perfect. They have to be perfect. They have to be strong and soft.
Yeah.
The standards for women have gone through the roof, and the standards for men uh, have not. And in fact, I think you kind of mentioned it before, but now there's even more of a move for men not to be masculine, as if masculinity was a bad thing.
Mm.
And I think there's a loss there as well. I think that the goal is for people to be more complete.
More complete. Yeah.
Not to without going too far. I have a little bit of trouble with, I think there is toxic masculinity, and I think you see it in your job. I see it
Yeah.
in my job, but masculinity is not toxic,
Right. Right.
right?
Right. Right. Right.
I think we have to value, if you see somebody being taken advantage of, it is a very masculine thing to go over there and stop it,
Right. Right. Right.
and that's not a bad thing.
Yeah. I think. Yeah. Yeah. Where this conversation. Yeah. I think for fathers out there raising children, being present, and oh yeah, okay, so um dads that want to be active in the lives of their children, you know uh listening to this conversation, I think good advice would be, like you said, teach them how to be amazing boys, right? That's it. Like, teach them how to be amazing men, right? With everything that we are. We do have testosterone, and that's here to stay, right?
Yeah, yeah,
We are going to be, we're going to have more muscle than women. We are going to be, maybe more physically aggressive doing sports, and that's okay. But also, you're right. I think that the balance, that the part that has been missing is that, like you said, we can talk about, we wanted to play sports better and do, these other things outside of who they are internally, but also that we need to say, well, what could I, as a father, help this child with internally? And that doesn't have to be, I don't know that this has to be a feminine thing. It just has to be like, well, let's not focus only on the external part of the child, but internally, what's happening, right? Let's have
yeah,
conversation. And if you can't have a conversation with your boy because you really don't know what to say, well, then see if you can get your wife and say, hey, honey, do you think you can talk to this guy
yeah,
about feelings? Because I really don't know. And it's possible, right? A lot of us have taken
yeah,
decades to figure out how to talk about feelings.
yeah. And we're still evolving.
Right.
Hopefully we're still evolving. So, I know there's overlap in terms of what dads provide and what moms provide, and it's also individual, right? I work with a lot of same-sex couples where it's either blurrier or it's just as kind of dichotomous.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it has to do with I think it has to do with being a complete person. I happen to be a male with testosterone, and I have a path to go, and if I was a female, I have a path to go.
Right. Right.
That's my gift, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
For some reason, I was just thinking of testosterone being like a tool. It's like a weapon, and you could use it for good or you could use it for bad.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, I think that for dads that are listening to this conversation and maybe are getting a little lost, and it is
Yeah.
complex, right? But if you're
Yeah.
getting a little lost, I think that there may be a one thing to build on, and that is at least one thing to build on that I can think of immediately is, can you help your boy? Um, can you help your boy understand, or can you plant the seed of feelings? Can you plant, meaning like, if you could just say to your boy, whatever age, say, how do you feel right now?
Yeah.
That might just be like a great start, you know?
I think it's part of being a complete person is to know, like, just asking that question, how do you feel right now? Are you okay? Hey, what's going on? Like, just attending to that part. I guess I'm, of course, thinking out loud is that, what I want my son to be a good man. But I also have to define what a good man means,
Yeah,
because for different generations, a good man was somebody who made a lot of money.
yeah,
And some people think you're a good man if you make a lot of money, or if you have a lot of women, or if you have a fast car. And so my hope is to define through words and through my actions what a good man is.
yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah,
a good man is sensitive, and he's also strong, and he's also, I don't know, brave when he has to be brave, and yields when he has to yield.
yeah, yeah. That's so true. Yeah, yeah. I guess, yeah. I've been hoping that these conversations will help me figure out what a good man is.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like, I'm sure eventually we could arrive at some sort of, I don't know, something that resembles a an
I don't know,
answer.
I don't
Yeah.
know if we're going to come up with a how-to manual, but characteristics of a good man, again, some of it I don't think you have to teach, right? Because of how society is raising our boys when we're not looking, right? But some of it we do have to teach.
Yeah.
Uh, some of the characteristics of what it means to be a good man or a good father, for example, have to
Yeah.
be taught.
Yeah. Yeah. I was asking someone the other day, a good friend of mine. I said, why is it that we why is it that um well, and I'll just tell you how the conversation went, and you can jump in and disagree. I said, I was watching on my Facebook feed that, lately there's been all of these arrests of men, and the rescue, rather, primarily of children that are being sex trafficked. And I'm seeing, like, lots on the feed, but I don't
Yep.
see it in the mainstream media. Like, I don't see it on channel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12.
Yep.
It's not on there. And I said, why is it that we're not seeing this? It's causing so much harm. It's so horrendously evil and toxic.
Yep.
And his response was, we don't seem to value children.
Yeah.
And that was like, it could be true that, why don't we talk about it? Why are we not up in arms about this, about, all of these children that are being so horrendously, scarred. And all of that to say that like, and you made me think of it, when you talk about the fast cars and the women and the money. it's
Yeah.
it's what we value.
Yeah.
That's what's on it's on all the feeds, what we value, right?
And I think we value. I think people value their own kids, and like conceptually you value other people's kids. But I think fathers that coach,
Yeah.
and me having never played, my friends, whenever my friends say that I coached a team, they always go, yeah, okay, coached, right? Because I never really played. I was a track guy. I never really played formal sports. But the times that I've coached, I've always found an assistant who knows about basketball, and I've been very focused on being like a good role model, good male
Yeah.
role model
Yeah.
to the kids on the team, and
Correct.
helping them manage their anger, and like that's been my focus is so I think what we don't value enough is other people's kids. You
Yeah.
know, I think we as fathers, you know, like there's a lot of missing fathers for many, many different reasons.
Yeah.
And, you know, anytime I've had an opportunity to be fatherly or father-like, or even just by proxy to other people's kids who are, you know, are on the team or whatever, like, so I think that's why we're able to look away from those
Yeah.
kids that are being child trafficked, and women, because it's men, I mean it's kids and women who are being trafficked, you know, and there's like a diffusion of responsibility, right? Those are somebody else's kids.
Yeah.
They should have been watching them. Where were they? Did they give them away? And you know, those are our kids too.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I mean, I think yeah. I think when they're when human beings are children, they're everybody's children. I
Everybody's
mean, we really should be looking at it that way because they're helpless. They're helpless.
no,
If they don't have if they don't have parents that, you know, if their own parents won't take care of them, then, you know, it should be the rest of us. I
yeah,
mean,
yes,
somehow, I mean, but it's a sad situation, and let's see if in this evolution of the definition of fatherhood, maybe one day it'll I don't know, it'll, you know, I don't know, also it'll bring in, also encompass some part of that very tragic part of humanity in which we
yeah,
apparently we have lived in for centuries.
yeah.
It's been an issue for centuries.
And I think it even falls even more on fathers, because
Yeah,
it's men who are predominantly doing all that damage.
yeah, yeah,
So, you know, to kind of tip the scales.
yeah. The I'm so glad that you brought up the idea of modeling behavior, because I think that it's another great lesson, and it pops up in these conversations often. It's really cool that it pops up
Yeah,
because people are thinking about it. It's like, if you don't know what to, let's say that you're a guy who just doesn't know what to say to his child. Maybe you grew up, no one talked to you. Now you're married, now you have a child, and you don't know what to sit down and talk to the kid about. I would say, don't worry about it. Let your wife do the talking. If that's what's happening, model good
yeah,
behavior, right? Like, just look at yourself as an adult, right? So let's say you're a 28-year-old or a 38-year-old male, a father of a child, boy or girl. Um, if you want to teach them, if you're saying to yourself, you know what, I'd like to teach my children good things, but I just don't know where to start.
yeah,
It's a really simple answer. Behave the
yeah,
way that you would want them to behave,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Yeah. And I think I would the advice I would also give is that kids really do tell you what they need from you. Right. I think you know, as a man, you come in with these concepts of, and this is why you know, again, it was such a blessing for me to have the girls first, because I don't know that if I had my son first, I think I would have been that kind of underdeveloped male for longer. I think he would have gotten a worse version of me, and then they would have gotten worse. So the having the girls really forced me to, you know, if you value them, then you value what they are, and how they are, right? And you
Yeah,
value their mother,
yeah,
and so I think in my own evolution, like that really helped me to be to take on teaching as a passive kind of thing. So, you know, kids will tell you what they need if you get rid of your own trash and your own garbage
yeah,
in your head,
yeah,
and you just sit there. Even when we were talking about the sex conversation, I can remember when my kids would ask a question, or I could tell that they were curious about something, and you start to tell them, and they know when to say, like, all right, I'm good.
yeah.
That's about all I want right now. I'm good. And so with most of these, you know, fatherhood and motherhood or parenthood, if you pay attention to the kid, they tell you what they need.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so I've asked this question before. Um, have have you asked your daughters and your son uh, to uh, grade you? Have you, or rather, have you asked them? What's the question? How well you're doing?
How am I doing? Yeah. like who was it? Was it Ed Koch who you said, "How am I doing?" Uh, in New York. Yeah, I do. Probably it's probably annoying to them. You know, I do, and it could be because of like the common career that we both have, which you're constantly evaluating whether your interventions are working. So, so I think I
It's
have
the, it's the, I just put it together. I hadn't put it together before. But I can't believe that you're using that on me. And I'm like, oh man, I've always, the entire time that I've been a dad, I've been like, working on interventions.
yeah, those are interventions. I when I took a class in behavior mod, and at the end of the class, my twins had been born, and I said to the professor, I loved your class. I can't wait to use this behavior mod stuff on my kids. And he looked at me. He said, I should fail you. He's like, they're going to modify your behavior much more than you modify theirs because you didn't learn anything in this class. So, so yeah, I see it. I see it as the kind of intervention. So the times that we've had to intervene or either punishing or talking or whatever, like I'll ask him, am I doing all right? Are we doing all right? How are we doing? Sometimes it's a joke. Sometimes it's be annoying trying to get a hug from them or something.
Yeah.
But I'll ask them like, we're doing a good job. Do you think we're too tough on you?
Yeah.
Are we too strict? Like I'll ask for a little feedback.
Yeah.
My son will tend to say, let's say we just recently went on vacation. We were playing volleyball in the pool, and my son was just he was trashing me. He was trash talking me a lot, right? And I said to him, you know what? I'm going to trade you for a case of Gatorade. And my friend said to me, he said, that was a little bit rough. That was a little bit rough. So I went back to my son later on and I said, hey, I said something in the pool. I just want you to know I would never trade you for anything. And he was like, Dad, you think about stuff too much. So I do check-ins. That's my long answer.
Yeah.
I do check.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, I do the same. I'm like, by the way, about that thing I said, do you want to talk about that? And usually it's like, no, it's cool. but you have to ask, and that's awesome advice, and I highly recommend that any and all dads should always be checking in, right? It's like, hey, Mikey, how am I doing, man? How did I do today? Or hey, Mike, I yelled at you earlier, and I feel bad about it. Are you cool? Right? Like, you want to talk about it? Hopefully Mike will say no. I don't want to talk about it.
I'll even ask them like, this is why they'd rather deal with their mother than with me, because when they did something wrong, I would even ask them like, what do you think we should do?
Right.
You think I can? I know what I want to do, but what do you think we should do?
That's always a great question. I always, someone was saying the other day that you would be like I think that more often than not we are surprised at how reasonable their response to that question is.
Yeah, take my phone. Like, you should take my phone, Dad.
Yeah, and I'm like, no, I that never even crossed my mind.
Yeah.
I have to yell at my youngest because my youngest will punish himself harder than I than I would have. And I'm like, no, dude, don't do that. Like, I don't want you to do that.
Yeah.
I have to lessen the punishment that he would give himself. And I'm like, no, man, I'm not looking. That's not what I'm looking for. Why are you being so rough on anyway? That's, they're all different, right?
Yeah.
But that's
you have to do check-ins too, because they change.
Because they change.
They change. The kid that you had last year is not the same kid this year. Yeah. And so whatever techniques you were using last year don't work. You have to be constantly checking in with them.
They change, man. They change. I talk about this. I think I talk about this in an abstract manner, or maybe it's like an abstract question. It's like, they're every year they're somebody else. And they're changing at such fast rate.
Yeah.
Like, and especially these days where they're absorbing so much information through their phones and their tablets and television and everything. Like, it's hard to imagine how much they're changing because there's just so much data dumped on them.
Yeah. And you see them every day, but so you don't notice it. But I take a lot of pictures. I'm a bit of an amateur photographer, and I grieve whenever I look at pictures, or when on my Google thing comes up a year ago,
Yeah.
and you see your kid playing soccer, and you're like, wow, he lost the baby fat, like he's a teenager now, or
Yeah.
so you have to grieve the loss of one child and the birth of another one every 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah, we do have to. I mean, that's another great lesson. Check in with your kids all the time, like monthly. If you're somebody if you're a dad that cares and wants to be active and just doesn't know how to do it, my advice is add it to your calendar. The same way that for instance, here's one. If you work for somebody else, if you work for a company, you work for somebody else, every year you expect to have a performance review,
Yeah.
right? So if you cannot think of how are you going to do this fatherhood thing and you're watching this channel, super simple. Add it to your phone and at least once a year do a performance review on yourself by having your children one by one sit across from you and
Yep.
give you a review of how you've done.
I'd say maybe quarterly.
I think so. Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, for most people, I think you'd be surprised how well you're doing. It's also validating because nobody knows how to do this. Like anybody who says they're an expert at fatherhood, I question their credentials because it changes every day. You change, the world changes.
Yeah.
And so I think those check-ins are important. And you'd be surprised how, I've been surprised, and again, not because I'm doing such a stellar job, but because I want to do a good job. And I think my kids are judging me on how much I'm trying. Plus, I'm the only father they have, so who are they grading me against?
That's right.
But yeah.
No, I like, yeah, I know. It's good. It's good information. It's good advice. This is, I sometimes, I have a fear. I'll share a fear with you. I fear that I may do something that may push him away and not want to be my friend,
Mhm.
later.
Yep.
That's a real fear of mine. Like, I hope they'll want to hang out with me,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. So the times when I get the kind of feedback that I'm looking for. So I'll give you an example. My 12-year-old, what was it? Just recently, like literally just a week ago. Well, my wife and our kid, and the four of us were sitting in the backyard, and I made a comment. I was having a beer, and I made a comment, and he goes, Dad, I'm waiting till I'm 18 to have a beer with you, right? And I was like, yes,
Yeah.
like he's not so much for the beer, and it doesn't have to be alcohol, whatever, but I
Yeah.
guess in his mind, it's a cool thing to do as an adult, especially because to them it still tastes horrendous. Thank
Yes.
God.
Yes.
Um, but for me, it was like, all right, he's forecasting, right? He's
I'm good for
projecting.
6 years. I'm
Yeah,
good for 6 years.
that's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It is. I had my father was very actively involved.
yeah,
He wasn't a great husband, but he was a really good father, and always quick with advice, always there when you needed him. Like he was present, but he was also a very difficult man, and so I at least have him as a compass that there's tons of what he did that myself and my siblings are good people, so he must have done something right. And by the same token, there are certain things that he would do that I know are maybe genetic, maybe because I learned that I know I can lock horns like that and get, be like him in that way. And I didn't like the way it made me feel.
yeah,
So I either, I try to avoid doing it or I'm quicker to fix it.
yeah. Quicker to
So
fix it. That's a good one.
quicker to fix it when I do slip into those things.
Yeah,
So
there are behaviors, and I think I may know what you're talking about. There are things that I do that I don't realize, I don't know where they come from.
yeah.
that are just instantaneous. Like they're just, it's just such an immediate response. It was such a programmed moment, and then I'm like, oh, that's stupid. I didn't mean to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
My
that's
my
not,
dad was
yeah,
my dad was real like argumentative, and so and I am too. And so I notice that sometimes when my kids are talking to me, like I'm thinking about how to make it a teachable moment, how to do something with it, how to refer back to what I told them 6 weeks ago, and I'm actively trying to discipline myself to just shut up and listen
yeah,
and not turn it into something. My
yeah,
father always felt this pressure. We told him I bought new sneakers, like he had a story about where sneakers come from and why you should value them and why you threw away the other. And so I'm trying to be more disciplined in letting them talk and being a passive observer rather than a
yeah.
teacher all the time, making a point.
I know. That's a hard one for me too. I've gotten but I've gotten better too. I've gotten better. I see it in my conversations with my wife. I've gotten better at just listening. It's like just not like just yeah. I used to be so eager, just so eager to like, oh yeah, yeah, and here and here and here and here and contribute like, and let's take this let's take let's take this simple conversation and turn it into like this huge deal, right?
Yeah,
um but I have to do a better job with my children. I have a moment. There is a moment in time. This is a weird in during the summertime. My boys were allowed to stay up until midnight, and um and by the time I'm going to bed at midnight, I'm spent. I'm done. I literally just I don't want to like let me go. But it's at that time that they feel like now that they don't have electronics and they don't have anything else going on and they're not sleepy.
yeah,
Now they're like, like, Dad, you wanna hang out? And I'm like, oh, so many times I gotta make that sacrifice, man. And I'm just like, all right. And now like I'm just laying on one of their beds and they're just talking, and then I get a chance to, because I'm so tired, I
yeah.
just want to listen. So it
Mm-hmm.
works.
Yeah. It's really rough. My son likes to play chess,
Oh yeah.
and I hate board games. I I loathe board games. Chess is one of the few ones that I know how to play. So we play once in a while. I know it's going to be one of my regrets is that I didn't play more chess with him. Because he wants to play all the time, and it's really like I'd rather clean the toilets in the house. It's and it's not him. I love playing with him, and he's so smart. And like 2 years ago, I would beat him, and now I think right now the current series he's got me like six. I think 6-2 or something like that. He's really killing me.
Yeah.
And he's just a much better chess player. But uh, but I know that I know that I'm going to regret that. I don't play enough with him, and but I think that that's part of fatherhood is like you're gonna have a ton of regrets about stuff you said, stuff you did, stuff you didn't do, stuff you wish you would have done more of. I don't know if there's any way to get this perfect.
There's got to be a balance that can be achieved, because apparently I think that regrets are important, right? I mean, I think I've started to think that it's how we know that we're caring. It's how we know that we can do better. So I think they're important, and but arriving at a balance where we don't allow those regrets to really hurt us, because they can be painful. When I delve into regrets, it's like, oh, I
Yeah,
don't want, like I'm like, I can't believe I did that.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, I think they're good to have. I mean, or at least to recognize that you have regrets. It's I think you must be in a good place when you have regrets, because I mean, at the same time, if you do have them, you're trying harder today.
yeah, yeah. I
Hopefully.
mean, right now, as I said that, I'm thinking in my head, I'm gonna have him bring the chess kit up, and maybe tomorrow or the next day we'll knock out a game or two this week. So yeah, I guess you're right. If you care, you'll have regrets, and it'll make you do better. So
Yeah. I got lucky with my oldest son. He likes fishing and I don't, but I don't mind being out there fishing with him.
right, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's nice.
um, yeah, man. Modeling behavior, I've said this several times already in this idea that, um, sorry, this idea that we spend so little time talking to them, even a guy as involved as you. You think about, like, if you break down a day into the hours where when we're awake, and, like, you may be counting minutes that you spoke with each one of your children that day, but they've watched you behave the entire time,
Yeah,
right? In the
yeah,
hours, right? Like, even if you're going on vacation, when you're spending all of your time together, you're still having maybe total 60 minutes worth of
yeah,
conversation, verbal conversation. But from a moment they woke up until they went to sleep, because you were together that entire time, they watched dad. And it's everything that you're doing that they're really recording, and that's what I'm going
yeah.
to be doing,
Mhm.
things they like or don't like about you, because it's just, it's so you have to be on guard the entire time. It's like you said, you're driving down the road, that guy cut me off, what am I going to do? Am I gonna get upset, angry, enraged here in the car and curse, or am I gonna be like, that guy must be having a bad day?
Right.
We're on vacation, everything's cool.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's important. So your dad, can you talk a little bit more about your dad?
Sure.
Yeah.
Um, my dad was an interesting guy because he was born in Puerto Rico during the Depression. During the depression that we had here, because there's been tons of depressions in Puerto Rico. And he was raised by his mother mostly. It was, I think, about 8 siblings. They were very, very poor. My father's father was an alcoholic who was very, very violent. Um, and I think my father quit high school when he was 16 or 17, joined the army during the end of the Korean War, came back, got his GED. Well, he quit school to work and to join the military. He and his older brother quit school and went into the service so they could make money to feed their younger siblings. And then after he got his GED, he went to college in Puerto Rico, and then he went to law school
Oh,
in Puerto Rico as well, finishing up in here in New York when he moved here.
yeah.
So he was, he probably had a good smattering of PTSD.
Yeah.
As I look back on it, he
Yeah.
passed away about 3 years ago. So,
Okay.
but he probably had a good smattering of PTSD from the domestic violence and all the other stuff he saw in his life.
Yeah.
But he left when he got his first divorce. He left Puerto Rico because his ex-wife moved to the States, and so he relocated to be next to my two older siblings.
Yeah.
And so he, like I said, in spite of his many faults as a husband, he was always a good father. Always as present as he could be and engaged. I still have some letters that he wrote me during kind of seminal times in my life. First breakup, looking for college, first time I got in trouble, things like that, where he
Yeah.
would write letters, things like that.
Yeah.
And always full of advice and really smart guy.
Yeah. How old was he when he passed away?
When he passed away at probably 79-ish,
Oh, okay.
or
All right.
83.
83. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Because you came later.
yeah,
That's why he was so much older.
yeah,
But it's I think so, but you you had overall a good relationship.
I had a good relationship with him. I think we all did it. He was a difficult guy. He had a bit of a chip on his shoulder when he was in Fort Bragg in North Carolina. He suffered a lot of racism in the military. He was very, very dark skinned. Um, and so he always kind of carried himself like, nobody's going to mess with me.
Yeah.
And so, like, he would, my siblings, if they ever hear this, they'll relate. He'd come out of ShopRite with the receipt, and he would be looking like, like somebody screwed him out of a bag of grapes or something. So, so that was, that was his persona, was like somebody was gonna mess with him. And
Yeah.
so, but also on the other hand, he worked for EEOC. He was an investigator investigating employment discrimination, and he did a lot of good work, advocating for people who were either being discriminated because of gender, race, orientation, different things.
Yeah.
He was on several boards in Newark, community boards and things like that. So he was like a civil servant. He was a social worker, a DIFAS worker. He worked for Veterans Affairs. So in
Wow.
terms of how he carried himself in the world, I think myself and my siblings really emulate really how he carried himself in the world, and we try to be better husbands because that's where he wasn't that good at that.
It was, yeah.
He was a good man. I mean, he never put hands on anybody and supported as many families as he could.
Yeah.
But but
Huh.
yeah. So
Yeah, it must have been cool. I mean, he sounds like, I mean, he sounds like, I mean, even with his flaws, like a good role model. It sounds
oh yeah,
it
yeah.
sounds like a great guy.
Many of my friends who either didn't grow up, so I have maybe 5 or 6 childhood friends who are from the neighborhood that I still see weekly to every other week, and all of them will say that my dad was like that was their model of a dad. He taught me how to work on cars. He taught us, he could fix everything. He used to do electrical work, plumbing. Even though he was an attorney by trade, he would fix. His line was always "siempre se puede,"
Uh,
which means you could always do it. So if you ever came to him and told him, "Dad, I can't figure it out," he would go, "I don't want to hear you can't do it. Let's figure it out."
yeah.
So there was a lot of like life lessons in that you know he wasn't he was kind of in spite of the paranoia, he was a pretty fearless guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's that story about grandpa being an angry alcoholic. It kills me how common
Yeah.
that is.
Yeah. Yep. He
Like,
had some, when his older brother, much like I do, deals with difficult topics with humor. But his older brother would tell these horrific stories about their childhood, and that my father would never tell us directly, but we would hear it through the older brother, and it was a pretty bad childhood.
yeah, yeah,
About as poor, the metal roof on
yeah,
the house type poor. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Wow.
yeah. But also, a story of success. He and his siblings did well in
Yeah,
life and raised a ton of kids, and so yeah, take the
yeah.
good with the bad.
It's so sad that so many of us are stuck in that. When I hear these stories about, dads just like, really like, just, beating on their kids when they get home, and
Yeah,
in their wives, and just like there's so much anger, is so much
yeah,
like rage out there, and men are stuck in these weird places where they cannot get out of, and just basically just destroy everything around them. I
yeah.
mean,
There's a lot of broken men. A lot of broken men. We talk about male privilege, and there is to an extent, male privilege in some senses, but boys and teenage boys, they get a raw deal. They bear the brunt of a lot of violence,
yeah,
whether it's community, household, or otherwise, absent fathers, things like that. And there's a lot of broken men out there who
yeah,
who I work with veterans predominantly, and it's it's so difficult for them to overcome that persona which they were raised with, and then which was reinforced by the military.
oh yeah,
And so many times these guys, and I'm sure in your job as well, they need a good cry. You know what I mean? They really, at the crux of it, is they need a good cry. They never grieve for themselves. They never, if you don't have empathy for yourself, you can't have it for anybody else. And so,
and I got, I gotta tell you, it's even for me to talk about crying is hard. I have a real hard time, even I have a
Country
hard
music.
time.
Listen
Huh?
to country music. Listen to country. I've been listening for about 2 years.
Yeah.
Uh, One of my coworkers only listens to country music when we go on road trips for work. He can only play country music, and it's kind of growing on me.
Yeah, yeah. Even with me, man, I have I understand this the benefit in allowing others to cry and like we're talking about our kids, right? And when they're,
Yeah,
when they fall, trip, or whenever they feel like crying, I'm like, dude, just go ahead and do it. Just go ahead, do your crying, man. It feels really good. But it isn't a go-to thing for me, man. Like I always find myself holding back the tears.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't it I don't know if it's if I feel vulnerable, or
Yeah.
maybe that's what it is,
Feels
right?
out
Like
of control. It feels out of control. It
feels out
feels
of
like you're
control.
losing. Yeah, I mean, I think one of my daughters probably taught me how to cry the best. She's just really good at it, and she would watch sad movies. So when she was feeling down, she would like lean into it or listen to sad. And I used to say like, why are you watching that? The boy in the striped pajamas if you're feeling sad or something. And and she was like, it feels good, Dad. She's like,
It
it
feels
just feels good. And I kind of believed her. I was like, so I just had also a flash to when we were in the hospital with the twins. Clearly, we're losing our mind, and this older nurse comes in, and she says to me, "Does it hurt when you cry?" And I said, "No." He said, "It doesn't hurt them either." Because we were so frantic, like trying to keep them from crying, and
Yeah,
she was like, "It
right.
doesn't hurt when you cry. You can let them cry." I said,
Yeah.
"Okay."
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
yeah.
I consider myself reformed.
Yeah.
Cry at sad movies, commercials get me once in a while. It doesn't. The
I
stigma is gone from me.
Right, right. I'd like to one day be somebody who can cry and enjoy it. I don't know when I'll get to that, but
You gotta practice in the shower and driving are two good things. And if you're driving with country music, even better. Those are safe spaces.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know about country music. Maybe I'll try it. I'll try it. It's probably good advice. So going back to your daughters, I feel so. I mean, we've had this conversation about what animals we can be, men.
Mm-hmm.
How much do you worry about two girls, 17, 18?
You know, you worry a lot. I think we've raised them to be resilient. And, they've been through a couple of breakups, and they've been through, some broken hearts and things like that, and weathered them well. And I think my wife has done a great job of coaching them through, keeping your integrity and while still feeling it.
Yeah.
So I'm not that. The worry is that, and when you have to go to the bathroom, the closer you get to your house, the more you have to go. The
Okay.
intensity goes up. Well, same thing with kids. Like the closer they get to like 18, 19, 20, like you're about to launch. My
You're about to
my
launch.
girls will be going to college next year.
Yeah.
And so that means they're going to be doing their own laundry. They're going to be picking their own bedtime. Like I'm really not going to be there to protect them. It's
Yeah.
mind-boggling to me. The first time they drive off, which was last year, like I was like, am I really doing this? Am I really going to let them? And so you have these kind of moments that life prepares you for to be able to launch them. So I of course I worry for them. That they could run into a bad guy, but kind of hitting rewind. I think if you teach women that it's supposed to feel good,
Yeah.
and by it I mean life.
Yeah.
Relationships are supposed to feel good. Sex is supposed to feel good. Dating is supposed to feel good. And that if it doesn't feel good, that you probably should go,
Mm.
right? And so I see that as an alarm system because as you know with domestic violence, it doesn't start with violence. It starts with manipulation. It starts with control. It starts with the tearing down your self-esteem. And so I've tried to instill in my daughters that, if somebody's trying to get between you and your siblings, or somebody's trying to split you from your friends, or somebody's guilting you about studying or something like that, like, that's a red flag. That's somebody who's thinking about themselves, not about you. And
Yeah.
so um, I think I've prepped them as much as I can, and perhaps because of the inside information of, again, having been a savage myself and working with many men who are committed to that life of being a savage in every way. Um, that I say it to them in a very non-judgmental way, right? Like, it's not that this person is bad; it's that this person might be bad for you.
Right.
And it's not that they don't love you; it's that maybe you don't want to be loved like that.
Yeah.
Because people do many bad things because out of love, and they really love you. But people kill each other because they love you. So maybe you don't want to be loved like that.
Yeah.
And so I try to prime. So I'm not worried about them in that sense. I worry about them. My daughters are very small. They're about 5 feet tall, and not that it matters, because if they were 6 feet tall, it's still they're vulnerable. But try to give them as much street smart as you can give them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I asked that question for so so as much as I don't like COVID and how many people it has hurt, both directly and families and the economy. I love having my kids at home.
Yeah. Yep.
Totally very
It's
selfish
selfish.
of
No,
me.
it's selfish, but yeah, it is nice. And right now I'm working. I work 1 week in the office, 1 week at home. And so I'm downstairs in the basement in my little office. I love hearing them upstairs when they come down for lunch. And
Yeah.
yeah, so for selfish reasons, I'm like, it's prolonged the lunch, because right now they'd be going to school, and then after school they go to their sports.
Yeah.
And now the girls have a car, so they go Starbucks, or they're going out with their friends. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll take it.
Yeah, me too. I mean, look, I didn't cause it.
I didn't know. I've been wearing a mask. I've been doing my part.
Yeah, that's right. So Ricardo, anything that we didn't touch on? What if you were me, or now that you have this opportunity, what other advice, what other thought comes to mind that you think would be beneficial to the men listening?
I'd say, just off the top of my head, I'd say, to be humble, right? This is not a science at all, being a father. Be humble enough to correct, apologize. When you screw up, when you're too rough on them, when you lose your cool, apologize to them. Treat their mother nice, right? I don't think, I don't think you can hurt your child's mother and not hurt your children. It's impossible.
Yeah.
So whether you're divorced or separated, or whether she's a complete nightmare, like, at some point that kid's gonna ask you, why did you treat my mother that way? So I'm very aware of how I treat my wife, how I support her, how I keep my mouth shut, how I yield, how I explain myself, how I apologize, and I want my kids to know the mechanics of a relationship, right? That it's not all, it's not all disaster, but it's also not all a bed of roses. So I think having the humility of apologizing and admitting when you're wrong is important. And I think asking for help is important too.
Yeah.
I've been blessed to have a circle of good men. I think one of the great things about this town that I live in is there's an abundance of really good guys. The sidelines are not just moms. The sidelines are full of dads, and parent-child night is full of dads, and so I ask for advice. I take advice. My friends will oftentimes tell me, you're a little bit too tough on her, or you're a little too tough on him, or you're not tough enough on him. You let him get with murder. And it gives me at least pause to kind of correct. So I think that humility, I think that's important. It's a tough job being a father, but I think mothers get it's definitely tougher to be a mother. I'd say it's tougher to be a mother, but you're flying more blind when you're a good father.
Mm, yeah. Asking for help. That's a tough one, man. That's tough. I
Yeah,
mean, that's talk about something that isn't taught.
yeah, yeah.
And
I,
it,
I,
yeah.
it's we do it to our peril. Like I I've come and it resonates with me. This is 50-year-old version of Ricardo talking. This is not 10 years ago, 20 years ago, different story. But I'm at the point where I don't spend too much time just wondering what to do. I get on the phone, I call somebody, I text, I Google it.
Mm,
When one of my kids was around 12, she started lying, and it was like really weird. She was just lying about everything. And I'm thinking, well, I've worked with teenagers before. I should know what to do. Once you're a kid, you don't know what you do. So I looked online. I said, lying in teenagers. And there's a ton of research and a ton of articles on the function of lying and how it's much healthier than we kind of think. You're not raising a psychopath. Like, I got all this relief.
yeah.
And so I'd say, whether you Google it or you ask somebody for help,
Mm,
don't just sit there and you don't have to wing it.
yeah. Yeah. It's not a part of the conversation at any time in my life. I don't remember anyone ever saying, if you need help, you should ask, or um, help is something that you want to ask for more often than not, or you don't have to know everything. It's okay to not know. Like none of these messages I remember.
It's
Even
not
now.
manly. It's not manly. You're a man. You're supposed to know.
Yeah.
Uh, so we come full
Yeah.
circle in a way. Like no, no. I have zero ego at this point in my life.
Yeah.
If I'm confused, you're getting a call.
Yeah. That's so weird too. Like, where did that even come from? That if you're a man, you should know. It's like, where did that, where did it even come from? What a weird thing to start.
I'm just thinking out loud. We, you know, somewhat evolved, I'll say, as I am. Like, I know that if one of my friends doesn't know how to use some sort of drill or something like that, I goof on him, you know? And if I don't know, if I'm watching, I'm not a real football guy, but
Yeah.
if I'm watching football and I don't know what's going on, like they'll goof on me for not knowing.
Yeah.
So I think, if we're doing it, it's built into the culture.
It's built. Yeah. 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 It's funny. It's funny to make fun of people. It's probably fun to make fun of people because we know exactly how it feels, right?
Yeah.
It's like we're this thing that feels so uncomfortable when people do it to us, we're gonna dish it back, right? And unfortunately, we very well be not recognizing that we're doing it to our boys,
Yeah. Yeah.
like indoctrination.
Yeah.
You're a fool for not knowing. You should have known better.
Well, I mean, we say to our kids, "What's the matter with you?"
Yeah.
Like, what's the matter with me is I'm 10. Like, that's what's the matter with me. I remember I
Yeah.
was working I just had a flat. I was working in a probation office in New York at one point, and this guy walks in with his kid, and his kid is running around, and he calls out to his kid. He's like, "Come here, what's the matter with you?" And one of the probation officers I remember yelled out, What's it? No, the only thing that matter with that kid is that he's in probation with you." So
That's a
we're
good.
very quick to say, like, "What's the matter with you? What's the matter with me? I'm 10 years old. That's what's the
Yeah.
matter with me. Teach me."
Yeah. Yeah, I remember. One of the more uncomfortable memories about my father was that's what he did. I remember one time when I was older, I was already in my late 20s, early 30s, and I went down to visit him in Colombia, and we went up to the to where he lives, like in the mountains outside of Cali, and and he's like, hey, you know, you want to ride this horse? And so I'm like, all right, yeah, I'll get on the horse. So coming, and so I ride out, and then I ride back in, and on the way, so it was at an angle, but on the way in, I'm going from dirt to concrete, to the concrete, to the street, right? I'm off, coming off the dirt and onto the concrete, and I'm coming up to him pretty fast. You know, I wasn't thinking anything of it, but he goes, whoa, 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 you gotta slow down, you gotta slow down. It's like yelling at me, and I'm like, what? And he goes, well, don't you know you're coming onto the concrete? And I'm like, no, what do I look like? I ride horses all the time? And I was so annoyed with him. And I was like, dude, why don't you didn't you think about this before letting me know? I mean, you know, I don't ride. Or two, can you be a little bit nicer? I mean, it's not like you see me every day.
Yeah.
I do the same exact thing to my boys.
Yeah.
I do it. I just literally 3 days ago, my boys decided that they wanted to paint their bicycles with, you know, I got, you know, by now, I don't know about you, but I have a box of paint cans, you know, because
Yeah.
you start a project, you only need a quarter of a can. So I save them. So they decided they were going to paint their bikes, whatever colors. I'm like, yeah, dude, whatever. I don't care. But my expectation was that they would understand that just as I do around the house, I put a drop cloth under everything that I'm painting. But no, that wasn't the case at all. Now I have like all kinds of colors on my driveway, and I'm meticulous about keeping the driveway, you know, with that black shine, you know, that you cover it with, whatever. So I was like, dude, why didn't you know? How come, what the hell? You're not thinking? And he's like, why are you yelling at me, man? No, I didn't know. And I'm like, I was like, all right, sorry, you're right. I mean, all right, okay, fine. So I was like, wait a minute, I have paint remover. I'm like, grab this, just clean it. I'm sorry, I was.
It's built into, like, I mean, I can remember my father would say, like, "Tú eres bruto."
I know.
You know, like just, which is like I don't even know what the English translation would be. "Tú eres bruto" is like, are you a dummy? Are you a moron?
Yeah.
About anything, about, like, if you spilled coffee or you spilled, like, what are you, a moron? Like, it was very, very quick to really tear you down.
I do that.
No.
I do it. It's such solid programming that I don't catch myself. I mean, until later, and maybe my wife will be like, and I don't. It comes out of. It's just like.
It's automatic.
It's full automatic, and I think I don't know. I mean, I think you know, my dad was around until I was 6. I think I picked it up in those 6 years. I can't think of any.
And you picked it up from other men too, because you might have been at a cousin's house and he spilled the coffee. He got called a moron. So, you know, I think it's, you know, it's built into how we treat boys. We don't do that to girls. We do that to boys.
Right. Yeah. I grew up with, you know, my mom and with a woman, and she never did it to me. She never did it. And here I am. I'm a 47-year-old man doing this to these children, like without no thinking. The go-to response is, "What are you, a moron?" How can that possibly be? Talk about regrets.
I do a lot of apologizing. Yeah. I do a lot of apologizing for my first impulse, right? So, you know, your first impulse, you're kind of not responsible for that one, right? You gotta give me a pass. So I will oftentimes go back and say, listen, I'm sorry I shushed you away, or I'm sorry that I, you know, snapped at you. And, you know, I mean, my kids are a little bigger now, and I'm not like a big imposing guy, but, you know, you're a lot bigger than your kids. And when you yell at them, like, you know, if my boss called me a moron, like, I'm going to HR, there's going to be a problem. Like, you know what I mean? And how quickly do we just shush our kids, or could you guys just shut up, or...
Yeah.
I mean,
it's funny that you meant.
We're doing better than our parents, but there's still a lot of work to do.
Yeah. We're doing, but that's it. That we can finish this conversation, Ricardo, with that one. We're doing better than our parents, but we still have a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
So don't leave me, okay? After we say goodbye.
I just wanted to say, I think this project is incredible, what you're doing. I don't see too much like this online. I'm a big fan of watching things like this, and I think that we dads, again, I don't want to. Women have it harder, mothers have it harder, but we dads we're flying very very blind. If you want to be a good dad, being a bad dad is there's plenty of research available on that. But being a good dad, you're kind of flying solo for many of us, and so
Yeah.
this is a great service that you're doing, and I'm very very honored to be part of it.
Thank you, Ricardo. Thank you for an awesome, awesome conversation. I absolutely loved it, enjoyed it. I thank you for being so open and honest. I hope that more, but I hope that one of the takeaways today for other men is to be more like you, more open and more open about the things that you're living, more open about their lives and their feelings and the mistakes that we all make,
Yep.
and
I think.
apologizing. I spend a lot of time apologizing too.
Yep. And apologize. A real apology too. It can't be a fake one. Don't be mad at me. It's a real listen, screwed up. Screwed
That's
up.
good. Ricardo,
All right.
thank you so much.
A pleasure. All right. Hope to see you around town.
I'll see you around town.